You're at the Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub, where we enjoy conversations with people who are engaged in the world of coaching.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Coaching Inn. I'm your host, Claire Pedrick, and today I'm in conversation with Georgina Woudstra, who has been to the Coaching Inn before.
I have, yes.
And is back because we are way overdue a coffee, and because she's got a new book out, her second edition of the Team Coaching book. So just a reminder, if you want to get every episode as it drops, please subscribe or follow on your podcast platform and check out the Substack Inside the Coaching Inn for all sorts of backstage stuff. Hello, Georgina.
Hello, Claire. It's so wonderful to see you again. And I hope, as well as, talking about my book, we get to catch up a little bit on what you've been up to lately.
Well, and you. So apart from writing a second edition of your book, what have you been up to in the last 3 years?
Oh wow, what haven't I been up to? No, we've been having a fantastic time really in the team coaching studio, at getting to know lots of other amazing team coaching practitioners who come along to our community and strut their stuff and share ideas with us, which is great. So we're really into broadening the number of voices around team coaching, so it's not just mine. We've deepened our diploma. We're going more deeply into mastering, into emergence, as they're now, when we started the team coaching studio, Claire, in 2017, there were only about 3 or 4 team coaching training programs in the world.
Wow.
And that's because there weren't professional body accreditations. Now the ICF, the AC, the EMCC all have team coaching accreditations. And at the last count, there are well over 100 different team coaching courses available. So people are saying to us now, what's different about yours? So we're really trying to be clearer about our mission, which is to develop mastery and for coaches to be able to go beyond tools and models and work in emergence, and finding a way to teach that and to do some quite advanced work with students who come and learn with us has been very exciting and massively rewarding. And I'm really happy with how it's going. So yeah, I've been up to that. And right at the moment, I'm in Malaga in Spain. My husband and dog and I travelled down here 2 months ago for a grand experiment. So we've for a long while wanted to know what it's like to live and work down here. So we thought, hey, we'll just come down and see what it's like.
Nice.
How about you?
I'm good, thank you. I would love to be living in Spain. That's very tempting. I thought that going to Spain to work for a week in the middle of a 2-week holiday was a great thing, but you're now tempting me to stay for a lot longer next time we go.
Yes, yeah, we did the week before, but 2 weeks before, holiday, gone to Spanish language school and things, but never for 2 months. And it's glorious. I love it, absolutely love it, and hope we can come back again, for more. So yes, back home the end of next week, sadly, Claire.
Okay.
So.
Oh, but you've so inspired me, because the digital nomad concept has to be more than a concept, right? We have to start putting it into practice.
Yes, totally.
And those of us who work online a lot, why would we not?
It's really enabled it, especially now, our kids have flown the nest, so we're free to go and do that, and I recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, when we were in Valencia and I was writing, every morning I walked to the beach and watched the sunrise.
Oh.
Then I had a coffee with my man in his cafe, who wanted a selfie of me with my laptop and everything. It was great. And then I'd go back to the apartment and write. It was just fantastic.
Brilliant. Now that's inspired me for the next book. I need a writer's retreat in Spain.
I'm much better at writing in cafes, except until I need the big screen. When I need the big screen, I have to be in my office.
Yeah.
So it depends how much of a mess my manuscript is in as to whether I can do it in a cafe. So what have you learned about team coaching since version 1?
thanks for asking that, Claire. I've learned, and somewhat it's confirmed what I suspected. So in a way, I've learned more deeply what I suspected quite a few years ago, is that the highest impact moments in team coaching, the most significant transformation, come when we're working emergently. We may do a lot of other more structured stuff to create a container to get into the space where we're really working in the here and now. But the memorable moments, the transformative moments, the deeper work all happen in emergence. And that this is something that I've known and understood and taught. However, I think a few years ago there were many more coaches were in the place of, give me the toolkit. I want the process. Give me the in the box process so I can get out and start practicing. Understandably, that's where people want to begin their practice. But now people have got several years of team coaching practice. They're going, it's helpful to have that toolkit, but it's no guarantee of success. In fact, it's a long way from it, because working with teams is messy, unpredictable, systemic, dynamic. It's constantly changing. And if we're trying to process a machine, a team through a machine kind of process, it's not going to work. And sometimes our pre-designed ideas mean we're so focused on getting through the agenda or doing the exercise next on the list that we miss the moment that's happening right here, right now. So it's confirmation of that. And in fact, one of our diploma grads from the first ever cohort, Claire, Sebastian Fox, now Dr. Seb Fox, in his PhD research, he was researching what has the greatest impact in team coaching, and discovered the same thing. It's through the well-held process of emergence. So there's more voices now exploring and joining us in this.
Which is exactly, of course, isn't it, what happens in one-to-one coaching in the emergent. I mean, it's exactly the same and different. What I love about your work, Georgina, is how deep you've gone.
Yes.
And how you surround yourselves with people going deep, so that when you share from with the wisdom of practice. And when you look at the plethora of stuff out there, either in the one-to-one space or in the team coaching space, finding the wisdom is a really important thing, I think, for coaches who are going to do any kind of development.
I agree. I mean, I guess these days anybody can put in ChatGPT, give me a 2-day process for coaching a team or something like that, and they'll probably get a fairly informed response based on books and stuff that's out there. You could get a workshop designed for you in 30 seconds, I guess. But the wisdom comes from being able to work with where the energy's at in the moment, and what the system of the team is trying to communicate with us in this moment. And that's beyond something that could be known to me before I'm in the room, let alone to ChatGPT or to any book or process. So a lot of our work is really about inner development. The best team coaches, in my view, not just a one-off course, but a regular practice, is looking after our own inner space, so that we can unhook ourselves from the triggers, the worry, the need to overperform, all the stuff that has us agitated and working too hard or in your head, so that we can be present with the moment and choose in an intentional way how to intervene.
Yeah, because I love your description. We're the vessel.
Yes.
Almost, aren't we?
Yes. And as you said, like with one-to-one coaching, it's a very similar thing about what prepares you to be in presence for one-to-one coaching. Simple things like cutting off all distractions. But what prepares you to be present coaching in a team has some differences, because I find that many coaches feel greater pressure to perform. In supervision, they're constantly saying to me, I feel this need to add value. I want to do a good job. I want this to be successful. And these wants are really well intentioned and wanting to be of service, and can get in the way, because ultimately it's the team's work to do, just as in one-to-one coaching, it's the client's work to do. So it's complex, and yet actually, once you get it, Claire, the interesting thing is it's remarkably and beautifully simple. There's an artful simplicity to it, and that's why I call my book Mastering the Art of Team Coaching, because it's an ongoing practice of mastering.
I'm using the word artful now.
Yeah.
Instead of mastery.
And how come? What's brought that up for you?
I think partly because in the coaching space, mastery is a thing to attain. We must get our master certified coach. We must get our master credential. We must do this. Whereas the artfulness is much more, for me, much more fluid and emergent, and having the capacity to dance in the space, I guess you could say.
Yes, exactly. And that's very scary, I think, for a new coach. Gosh, I remember, Claire, my first ever corporate coaching session. So I'd done a load of freebies. Thomas, do you remember Thomas Leonard?
I do.
Yeah, dear Thomas Leonard, who was often thought of as one of the grandfathers of coaching, a bit like John Whitmore. Thomas said to me, this was more than 30 years ago, he said, just go out and get your first 100 clients, Georgina, even if you have to pay them to let you coach them.
Yeah.
So I'd done everything I could do to get my practice in. I got my first corporate client, and I'd done mad things like, looked at the list of 100 great questions you could ask. What's the magic question? I was so nervous about adding value, and what if I didn't see to be added value, and what if I ran out of things to think about or say, or, so much road noise going on. So I have huge empathy for anyone starting out, because I've experienced so much of that myself. Getting to the place where you can clear out that noise, like white noise on a radio station, is such a beautiful and serene place.
We had 5 reams of paper for our handouts. Do you remember, for Coach University?
Yeah.
It was really
5
thick.
reams. Yes, exactly.
And you had to go in your head to the page. Oh, I thought this was somebody who was going to talk about this, but they're going to talk about that. But I read this page.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't read that page. Yeah.
And now with team coaching, with so many schools, almost every one-to-one coach training school is thinking about or developing a team coach training program, because you've got a load of alumni there who are very loyal to the school, who go, hey, train me in team coaching. So I understand it makes commercial sense, but it's not easy for the faculty to gear up and get trained to deliver something. So so a lot of the courses on offer are, here's a pre-designed workshop. Here's an assessment tool. So you can diagnose the team, you can find the gaps, and then here's some modules to plug the gaps. Useful stuff. It'll get you so far. But what I want to say to people is be aware, be really aware that there's so much more learning to do to go beyond that. And that really begins with self. So I'm curious, Claire, I'm sure this comes up for you as well in the training that you do around the artfulness and presence. How do you find you support coaches in getting into that space inside themselves?
My favourite piece of development is improv training.
Allard's told me about that. You and your improv training. Yeah.
Because the things that you're talking about, I don't think you can learn from a book.
Yes.
I think you can learn a lot from a book, and I think you can learn a lot from a course, and you can learn a lot from practicing. But moving from practicing to being in the room with somebody who doesn't know what you're doing together and isn't necessarily bought into doing the work is such a huge challenge. So I think all the stuff around courage, presence, being able to step in when you know you need to step in, but you don't know what to say, but you do know you need to step in. All of those things can be beautifully tried out in a safe and fun space of improv. And our observation is that when coaches do that, they are much more confident to step in the real world. In the last 2 or 3 days, I've listened to a number of recordings for coaches who are going for their MCC. I tell them they're on a journey to become an artful coach, and we'll get them recordings for their MCC on the journey at some point. But what was fascinating with one yesterday, actually, was she said, I thought the person wasn't thinking, and they were just telling me a lot of stuff. And I said, well, let's just listen. And through this person, 10 minutes they spoke for, lots and lots of talking. The coach made noises at various moments during this thing. And each of those noises was a moment when actually, if they'd had the confidence, they'd have then stepped in with something. And it was beautiful because I was able to say to her, you've got your timing bang on. Now it's the work now is the courage to step in. And she said, but I don't know what to do. And I said, no, that's the point.
Beautiful. So you brought to life there what you experience in the room with improvisation.
Yeah.
And that, what that feeling of one foot on the accelerator and the other even more firmly on the brake, isn't it? It's like that, you're going, oh, I know there's something coming up for me, but I've got my foot on the brake.
Yeah.
And that seems to be, and maybe another PhD student will research this at some point, Claire, but it seems to be an amplified phenomena with team coaches. Hence, what people do is they reach for the facilitator's guide and the exercise. What's the next step in the approach?
Yeah.
Because that's almost like clutching onto some guardrails. Gives that feeling of safety. What are we going to do now, even if it's confusing or complicated? See, one of the things that when I look at stuff written about team coaching out there that's so very populated with models is it puts the coach into a position of needing to become an expert, or at least believing they need to become an expert, and to have a load of analytical stuff about what makes a great team, what makes a team highly effective, what they should be doing, how they should think, how, the team design, etc., etc. And in all of that, we miss the fact that right in front of us is a living system that already has beauty and grace, even if it has bad behaviors and some difficult stuff going on, but there's beauty and grace in there just in the sheer fact that they call themselves a team and they get into a room virtually or in person together, and they've been doing that repeatedly for some time. That's amazing in and of itself. And then you see the team interact, and even if on first sight it looks ineffective, you can see there's some beauty within how they are encountering each other. And so part of our work is looking first to see the team in its wonderment and to see what is supporting it in being a team. And without that thought, without that idea being sown in your head that to be a living system, there's something that's supporting the fabric of those connections. Otherwise, they'd just be, I don't know, like a bunch of dots with no line between them. Training your eye to look in wonder for that is very different from running an assessment tool and looking for the gaps. And what I find when many coaches get in a room to start working emergently, We might give them a simulation and they watch a team or live role play of a team, and instantly their minds are looking to critique.
Yeah.
What's not working here? What would I like to see that should be better or different? So if you take those two sort of polarities of, let's call it function and dysfunction to make it rather extreme polarity, we might be out of awareness just looking for dysfunction, so we can add value. Because if we point out the gaps, then we can close those gaps. And we could even design a module around trust, or get out that book, Covey's Speed of Trust, or something like that, and buy the Covey workshop on speed of trust and go and run that. It's a fundamentally different approach to helping the team become aware of what really supports them, what brings them aliveness, what's already functioning, and then to become aware of what's going into the shadow because of that. So I give you an example. So a team I was working with fairly recently, they're very brilliant engineers. Oh my goodness, their capacity to think is out of this world. Quite daunting. I felt intimidated getting in the room with them because of the IQ through the roof. And then you've got that compound effect of being in a whole team of people like that. Watching this team interact, and the conversation is like, we talk around a subject. They bring a subject in, they talk around the subject. Somebody latches on to a piece of data, and then collectively they go down a well-informed and highly educated rabbit hole, all sharing their knowledge about this one thread, until really the strongest player in terms of information wins, or wins the points for the day, or wins the conversation for the day. So what we want to keep is their capacity to use their intellect. I mean, nobody wants to lose that. What was in the shadow for them was really their capacity to connect that between themselves. It was more like a competitive sport than let's build on each other's ideas. Let's take this forward. Let's really listen deeply to each other. Let's make sure each person's fully heard so we can extract the value from each thinker. Simple idea, complex in action. And we want to keep both. Yeah, it's not a gap analysis. You get that data just from being with the team in their natural habitat and seeing how that team functions in their natural habitat. A bit like going out into the jungle and being with the gorillas or something like that.
I
You looking for their
absolutely
natural
love.
patterns.
You have spoken so many times in the last few minutes about looking.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think that's the same in one-to-one. And when we're looking in the book or the manual or we're not seeing what's in front of us. One of the principles in improv is if you don't know what to do, look at the person in front of you.
And what are you looking for in the person in front of you, Claire?
You don't know. No idea. But you're looking because you will find your next move from looking at the person who's with you.
Yeah.
And that's what you're describing.
And in that looking, there's so much data.
Yeah.
There's not just the body language, which is a lot of data in itself, especially in a team. In a team, there's the interactional patterns. So one thing we teach is coaches, you can track, you can look or listen for the content. And many people who come into team coaching are skillful facilitators, and they're extremely good at listening and capturing all the threads of content so they can summarize that back. So going beyond that, going one layer deeper, how do we observe, track, notice, process, which is how what's occurring in front of us is occurring. What's the interactional dance that's here? And what does that dance feel like? So the third layer is the affective quality of that. So allowing myself to be impacted by the team. So what does it feel like being with this team as this dance is playing out? And then another layer below that isn't visible, so we can't access it just by observation, are the dynamics. Because the dynamics are as, if you imagine like a volcano in an ocean, volcanic island, everything that's under the water, which may have deep roots like an iceberg, that's what we're talking about as the dynamics, unseen but felt. They disturb, they can even heat up and create an eruption like a volcano. It's felt. Occasionally what bubbles up becomes visible, turns into behaviors or some kind of drama playing out, but we feel it long before then. So learning to tune in and give voice to, and to make what's invisible visible. And I think this is the artful way of a team coach, is finding a way to give voice, to make visible what's invisible, to name what's unnamed, to speak what the team have up until now found no words to speak. And that's our own, comes through our own relationship with ourselves.
And that's uncomfortable.
And it's uncomfortable, and can invite our inner dialogue of, well, that's just me. This isn't about me. It's about them. And all that we disown about data that's affected, how we're being affected, and realizing that is data, and being willing to act on that, which is to me like the improv part. It's yeah, comes through the exchange. It's between.
And there's an intimacy in the dance that you're describing, isn't there, between the team coach and the team, that requires the team coach to be looking.
To be looking
and to be fully attentive.
Fully attentive, yes. And to be showing up in a way, in their way of being, that creates a supportive container.
Yeah.
You know, I really believe we need to aim for building a supportive container before we shift to any form of provocation. Ultimately, we're usually brought in to disturb, because usually there's some agenda for change. I say usually, I'm not sure I've ever been brought in where there's no agenda for change. It might just be that agenda's it's really not clear what they're wanting.
Yeah.
But my assumption is, if I'm brought in and investing the time and the money, there's some agenda for change. Therefore, they want some disturbance. But for us human beings to risk the vulnerability or exposure of that disturbance, we need a lot of safety and support. So again, sometimes I see coaches going in to look and be present, but imagine they're doing it like, I don't know, like a doctor in a white jacket with a clipboard and a pair of glasses and a frown, peeking up over the clipboard. You know, it shuts the team down, and what you see is the team survival mode come out. So the adaptive behaviors, or resistance, as we call it, which is interrupting their own contact with awareness, because they don't feel safe enough for that awareness to be seen. And that's a lot about how we show up.
Yeah, and that's vulnerability, isn't it? Which means that we need to not know what we're going to do. We need that the not knowing and the vulnerability, I think, come together. And
yes,
so similarly and differently in team coaching and one-on-one.
I think it goes a bit beyond that as well in this idea that comes from Gestalt, which I love, which is presence. Real presence is about empathic responsiveness. So sometimes when you watch a team interact, imagine you're on the sidelines or on a balcony, not with the team, and you watch a team interact. One person says something and they may be met by poker faces or top of the head,
Yeah.
or looking out the window, fiddling on my phone. Now that's not just about it stifles thinking, it's that there's no contact. And without contact with other, without contact with ourself, or without contact with what's wanting to emerge, no coachable work is happening.
Yeah.
There's no data available to the system for us to work with. So that empathic responsiveness is really important. And sometimes coaches aren't aware of that. They've not had the chance to think about that. So they show up in this sort of, I think, running a mantra of it's not about me. And therefore, one team member says something, the coach keeps a poker face. They track the content and write down the content of what someone said so I can summarize it later. Then they wait for or invite the next person to speak. I can't respond to that. And so it goes on, where the coach is out of awareness, has not managed to build a contactful, empathic, responsive space that builds a container. Now, obviously, we want to get to a place where team members do that for themselves, where they're making the container, where they're in contact with each other. That's the ultimate goal. But many are unlikely to be there at the start. So we need to be an anchor to begin with and build that container, hold that space to start with. So these are simple ideas, and harder if you're, of course, running. Where are we on the time? What's the next bit on the exercise? I've got to teach this model. It's very hard to remember that. The importance of container building and empathic responsiveness and the effective quality of presence.
Which is all in 101 too, isn't it? How interesting. So,
Yes.
Georgina, you've got a second edition of your
Yes,
book.
I do. Yeah.
So, I know lots of our listeners have bought the first edition. What's different about the second edition?
Oh, well, thank you for asking, Claire. I had quite a few months of negotiating with myself because I was feeling the urge to write a second book, which was much more purely about working emergently. Because my first book, I wanted to meet coaches where they're at, which is give me the basics, tell me what a team coaching journey might look like and what some of the different interventions along that journey might be and the competencies. And so it's foundational. But I also wanted to not create the illusion that that's enough, that working in a contactful, presentful, emergent way is important. And I think I went so far with that in the first book. But I felt it needed more. It needed to go further with that before writing a specific book on working emergently. To help people understand, I guess, the essential balance between structure and emergence, how we need a holding container or set of containers like a team coaching journey. The client needs some sense of what's the journey look like that we're going to be going on, and what might those stages be, and what's your approach to want to get into the relationship with you and to take the risk of being vulnerable, But to get into the more impactful work, we need to work emergently. So I wanted to bring that more clearly through, and also through our teaching in our diploma program. Some of the ideas that expressed in the first book, I hadn't really written enough into, and here's how. And for example, what I talked with you about before about looking or observing that you can process content, dynamics levels, as well as impact on self. What does that really look like?
Yeah.
Similarly with, if you're intervening emergently, how do you intervene at different levels of the system? And what does that look like as an intervention? And then I've put in more vignettes to try and bring it to life from stories, compilations of stories
Yeah.
really taken from so many different teams I've worked with.
Nice.
To take it off the page, hopefully, in a way that helps people picture and experience a bit better. I mean, as you say, you can only get so far with a book. At some point, you really need to get into the room and experiment and practice and learn with practitioners. But that was the idea behind it.
Sounds like our listeners who've got your book should be giving it away and buying the second edition.
I think that's a great idea. Also, whether you bought the second book or not, you can go to our website and download a accompanying workbook. It'll make more sense if you've got the second edition, because there's supporting materials for each chapter, but also a whole reflective practice area. So, for example, imagine, Claire, building your own team coaching manifesto. What would you say to clients, perhaps, about what your philosophy is of team coaching, how you think change happens, how you show up, what they can expect, what you do, what you don't do? So
Nice.
there's little workbook exercises for that and examples, and it's about 80 pages long, just the downloadable workbook.
Wow.
So any listener can access that now, even
Fantastic.
if they've bought the book or not.
So we'll put a link to the book in the show notes. We'll put a link to your website in the show notes. And if people want to talk to you, Georgina, how do they make contact?
They can email me at georgina@teamcoachingstudio.com. So please put that in as well if you're up
Definitely.
for that, Claire. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. We have a beautiful community of team coaches worldwide. It's called the TCS Team Coaching Community, where every month we run arena practice sessions inspired by Brené Brown's, the courage of getting into the arena.
Nice.
We say get into the arena and practice emergently. We have team coaching clinics, which is a bit like peer supervision every month. We're just about to start a inner development series in September, where Allard, my business partner, Allard de Jong, and I will be running a series of exploration into the IDG and the development goals and what that means for team coaches.
Nice.
And we also, on our website, we have a free e-learning course that is really significant. It's about 12 hours of learning called Team Coaching Fundamentals, for anyone who's just wanting to get started, find out a bit more, then they're welcome to sign up for that as well.
Fabulous. All those resources, lovely listeners.
Yes, plenty.
Georgina, it's so lovely to have caught up with you a little bit.
And you, Claire. And you. Thank you for inviting me here today.
Well, pleasure. Thank you for coming. And everyone, thank you for listening. And we'll be back next week with another episode. Bye.
Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we'd love you to share the podcast with a friend or leave a comment on social media. And if you'd like to become a regular at the Coaching Inn, you can subscribe on Podbean and all major podcast channels. We look forward to welcoming you next time. You've been listening to The Coaching Inn, 3D Coaching's virtual pub. For more information, check out 3dcoaching.com.